In December 1964, a committee was formed to develop the ideas of Tom Tilley and the vicar Jack Davis to produce an exhibition showing some of the history of Old Potterne, similar to the one held in the 1950s. Over the next 6 months this grew into Potterne Festival, a week to enjoy with a garden fete, religious play, cricket match, dancing in Duck Street and other attractions in the High Street, starting with the inaugural church service and culminating in a pageant on Saturday night, with a concert in the church on Sunday, and with many more attractions and exhibitions throughout the week. The programme gives some idea of the enthusiasm of the committee and everyone who participated or came to enjoy the event. 40 years later, it is interesting to look at the adverts for local businesses. Sadly, only 4 or 5 are still in business. Making a film was suggested at a meeting in January 1965. Cedric Pearce and George Day decided to make a film depicting a day in the life of our village. Filming started on Good Friday, using a borrowed camera and this old Bell & Howell wind-up camera. We had a budget of £25, which was enough for 6 or 7 films, each lasting about 4 minutes, with just 6 weeks to complete, send the films away to be processed, and then edited. With less than 2 weeks before the first showing, Mick Mayland wrote the commentary after we had edited the films. Sam Alver only had time to read the script through once before Stan Perrott recorded the soundtrack onto a reel-to-reel tape recorder similar to this one. When we showed the film, Stan Perrott controlled the tape recorder beside the stage, and George Day synchronised sound and picture by adjusting the speed on this projector using the sliding adjuster, but later on the sound was striped onto the film. We showed them to over 600 at 4 shows. The first night there were 2 performances as the queue for the first showing stretched back to Church Corner. The second film is a record of many of the events which took place throughout the week. With many other festival commitments and work, it was impossible to film everything, especially when 2 or 3 events were happening at the same time. Before the original films start to deteriorate, I have transferred them to digital video, and with the help of Jerry Hughes of Radio Wiltshire, who recorded the original soundtracks on disc for me, I have used this computer program to remake the films as near as possible to the original. In 1977 we made another film showing how the village celebrated the Queen's Silver Jubilee throughout that summer. And Richard Pearce also recorded the celebrations with his camera and presented them as a slideshow. When you watch these films, I hope they will bring back many happy memories of those times and all who took part. I wonder if the films will inspire present-day villagers to attempt similar activities in the future, possibly for the 750th anniversary of our own Church of St Mary the Virgin.
Springtime, 1965. The filmmakers bring to you their village. Lanes, fields, hedgerows, the high street, and a great variety of rural architecture are the real stars of this film. These have been here for centuries, for this lovely village is rooted well in English history. You will see a few of the present-day villagers living against this ancient setting, repeating in their turn the normal rhythm of daily life. Rural England is changing, and specialization in the farming industry has altered greatly the pattern of work. Fewer people work on the farms, as machinery speeds up and increases one man's efficiency. Each day, many villagers journey to nearby towns, where light industries now offer varied forms of employment. Within the village, there are many interesting organizations, well supported by young and old alike. In this film, we can but show a few of these. Notable changes in the village life are recorded by older villagers. The saddler, the miller, the blacksmith, the wheelwright, and the carpenter, these have gone. Those who require the services of such craftsmen must go to the market towns and shopping centres. Despite these fundamental changes, there is still a strong sense of village life. After the day's work in factory or office, or on the farm, evening time finds the villagers engaged in many pursuits. Church and chapel, clubs and pubs provide an interesting variety of meeting points and activities. Newcomers to the village are soon absorbed by the opportunities for leisurely meeting with neighbours. Potterne landmarks include the fine, sturdy, early English church of St. Mary the Virgin, closely linked in time with the cathedral church in Salisbury. There is a fine group of timbered dwellings in the High Street, most notable being the Porch House. Many handsome thatched cottages and fine homes of larger proportions abound. Two distinctive dwellings of the latter category are Court Hill House and Church House. On the wind-swept hill of Potterne Field, there is the single outstanding elm tree, one of 3 planted by the Grubb family to commemorate Waterloo. The traveller is well advised to leave his car and explore the village on foot. Like many North Plain villages, Potterne can offer rare views of unsurpassable beauty. Vistas of the downland to the north and Salisbury Plain to the south, wooded corners and ancient lanes of great beauty. Stroud Hill Farm lies to the south of the woodlands known as Grubb's Wood. Mr. Cecil Brown is seen admitting his herd for early morning milking. Like all dairy farmers, his is a 7-day working week. Modern milking machinery has greatly assisted such farmers. This type of milking machine is used throughout the village. Similar to many rural areas, only half of the farms in the village are milk producing compared with 25 years ago. Before being collected by the processing dairy, the milk passes through the cooling unit. The milk float and milk bottle are as much a feature of village life as in the town. Johnny, our local milkman, delivers to Mrs. Wells before driving off to complete his rounds. The village post office is in the High Street. The postal service maintains efficient timekeeping despite the moods of wind and weather. Deliveries to the more outlying parts of the village are made by van, but Walter Burt still uses a bicycle. Knows Wiltshire better than most. With his workmates, he drives many miles each day on the highways and lanes of this beautiful area. The quiet jog of horse-drawn haulage is over. The thunder of the diesel engine is the sound of modern transport. Mr. and Mrs. Fred Pinchin keep the village grocery and meat store, originally one of the village bakeries. This building at one time housed an old-type brick-side flue oven, which is no longer an economical proposition for baking. The nearby market town serves the villagers for some of their needs. Gone are the days of the jumbled general store. A modern and well-equipped shop is a necessary feature of the village. As their fathers before them, these children still make the village store their centre before making their way to school. The school bell housed in the roof of the headmaster's house now remains silent. In its place, the handbell is rung by Mr. Naylor, the headmaster. This building has seen many changes. Mr. and Mrs. Smith now have their petrol station and hardware store where once the village saddler worked. The craftsman, the saddler, was Bill Smith's father. The late Mr. Smith was also for many years the much respected licensee of the George and Dragon. The village now boasts its own ladies' hairdressing salon. Since 1964, Miss Rosemary has served the ladies of the village. Potterne possesses 3 inns and a club. Here we see the drayman of the local brewery making a routine delivery. Chris Giddings is a thatcher. His work is admired by all who appreciate the beauty that is attendant upon sound craftsmanship. There is still a wide demand for his ancient craft. Weather-beaten faces are a common feature on land and sea, and rural Britain provides many fine examples. Our old friend and villager, Mr. Harry Bryant, has spent a long life in outdoor work. He still tends his garden, and our film reveals some of his skill in handling garden tools. The village verger, Mr. Len Wells, will soon celebrate the 100th year of his family's service to the village church. He serves well our beautiful church of St. Mary the Virgin. As bell ringer, clock minder, he maintains the efficiency of the tower. His son, Hubert Wells, assists him in the maintenance of the churchyard. The beautiful aspect of church and grounds owes much to the work of father and son. The manor house, Court Hill, is set in attractive grounds, which give a delightful southerly view to the present occupants, the headquarters staff of the Wiltshire Fire Service. This large house, like so many others, enjoys a new lease of life by serving as the headquarters of a public department. A local fire officer, Mr. Tom Baker, displays some early models of firefighting equipment with old-type firemen's helmets. Our film shows a little of the activity of the brigade control room, and at the time of filming, a local farm fire demanded prompt attention from the control staff and firefighting crews. The coloured telephones assist the control officer as he gives directions for the fire appliances to be deployed. A long list of names reveals the unbroken service of the Church's ministers in this parish. The Reverend J.T. Davis maintains an office which is centuries old. Births, baptisms, burials are a regular outward action of his office. But we all should remember the intercessions regularly and daily offered for our village and people. The vicar is the guardian of our Christian state, and we owe to him friendship and loyalty, for he is always available to assist us in our need for God's ministry. Our film shows the vicar preparing for a wedding. Many forget that the church is an important custodian of records, and the priest must prepare the appropriate registers before the service of holy matrimony. This is the day for Miss Sandra Tracy. The village church is an attractive setting for the young couple whom we see on their wedding day. The vows before the priest have been made. The records of our village have received more names. The joyful bells have been released to give their merry greeting, and we see the newlyweds descend from the church, surrounded by their happy relations and friends. Under the leadership of Brown Owl, Mrs. Hopkins, the Brownies perform their opening ceremony. These children portray the gay, carefree spirit of the younger generation of the village. Similar organizations cater for other age groups and are typical of the many varied activities which function through the zeal and enthusiasm of the adult organizers. Although lacking a village green, traditional cricket matches have been played for the past 30 years in the delightful setting of the Grove. These pleasant surroundings are in close proximity to the butts, reminding us of that even more ancient pastime, archery. Other forms of social activity are to be found in the local inns, where many enjoyable evenings are spent. The ever-popular game of darts is still a feature of the inns. Now found side by side with the rival attraction, the one-armed bandit. Members of the Rifle Club are seen firing in the Tube Range. These ranges are peculiar to the Devizes district. The club offers many pleasant hours of enjoyment and friendly competition to its members. The Potterne players are seen rehearsing for their festival production. This company has been flourishing for the past 17 years, producing both comic and dramatic entertainment of high order. Time, gentlemen, please. How reluctantly the customers depart. The congregation assembles as the pealing bells calls them to worship. In this mid-20th century, congregations are nowhere as large as they used to be, but here the village still has its regular congregation. It is said that nowhere in the world is the art of chain breaking brought to such a pitch of perfection as in England. The craft is still handed down by enthusiastic masters to the younger generation. Mr. Wells, dignified in verger's robes, leads the church choir in solemn procession. They proudly wear the light blue of the Royal School of English Church Music, to which they are affiliated. Church musicians everywhere proudly give their services, amateur or professional, and Potterne Church is fortunate in its loyal choristers and organists. The church possesses a well-built two-manual organ with pedals. This is placed in a loft on the south side. This instrument greatly helps sung worship. The procession we see precedes the service of Matins, and as we watch the choir enter the dimly lit chancel, let us remember the centuries past and the villagers who have worshipped Almighty God in this place.
hammer blows, the sound of voices. Our little gang of volunteers worked on the roadsides leading to Potterne. We were pleased to see the festival signs go up. At last the wayfarer would see that our plans were completed. The roads are busy. Proper care was taken to protect our volunteers aloft. The strings of gaily coloured lights were prepared and secured all along the high street. No festival occasion can be complete without decorations for night time. We intended that our high street would be an attractive feature for our visitors and memorable for ourselves. As we worked, interested eyes from private cars and buses noticed our activities. We were pleased to think how this village effort would be discussed, and our invitation to all accepted by friendly and inquiring strangers. All the village showed proof of its support. The small roads became gay with flags. Like a proud ship, the village was dressed over all, with strings of gay bunting. The dignified black and white of the porch house, we knew, would become a focal point for all visitors sharing in our week's festival. The Festival Information Centre was set up in the antique shop. Before the inaugural service on Sunday, June the 6th, uniformed societies walked in dignified procession in the High Street to the parish church. The procession entered the churchyard at the east gate and then moved through the pleasant tree-lined paths to the church. All who were present will remember the atmosphere of excitement and fulfillment as the hour of the service approached. From Church House Gardens moved a procession of villagers and guests, led by the chairman of the parish council and his lady. Solemnly they were guided to the south porch of the church. Young and old alike realized how Potterne's name would be remembered for this witness of activity and friendliness. All the village was represented, and many friends were there. It had been agreed that thanks should be given and prayers offered to Almighty God for the joy of living and working in this ancient Wiltshire village. Now the inaugural service was about to start. The dignified parish church of St. Mary the Virgin reminds us constantly of our ancient bond with the diocese and cathedral of Salisbury. The vicar of Potterne, with visiting priests and lay readers, attended upon the Very Reverend the Dean of Salisbury, who came to lead the villagers in their prayers of thanksgiving and in the act of dedication so fittingly to be made at the start of the festival. The service was preceded by fine organ music. Gradually the church filled. Loudspeakers were ready to broadcast the service to anyone unable to enter the crowded church. The singing of the cheerful hymns of praise will long be remembered. Many thought with gratitude of those no longer present but in spirit. The crowded congregation felt the excitement and liveliness of corporate worship, and Potterne, our village, was jubilant on its festival eve. After the service, a reception, held on the lawns of Porch House, gave distinguished visitors refreshments and the opportunity of meeting the festival committee and members of the parish council. Monday, June the 7th, was Carnival Day. Balloons were released by excited children. The festival commenced. The fete was held at Sandfield on the Devizes Road. A large car park adjacent to the field gave visitors welcome hospitality. Fancy dress parades are always popular, and the children enjoyed the excitement of strange clothes and the clear approval of adult spectators. Many notable costumes were designed by parents, eager to make this day one of laughter and joy for children. The crowd grew and grew. The best traditions of village merrymaking were upheld by laughter, raised voices, and the quick movements of the young. Entertainments were immediately in full demand, and the committee did not fail to present a wide, exciting and popular range of activities. It is always good to renew old acquaintances and to meet new friends. The bustling groups proved the happiness of those present. The mixture of activities was rich. Good old bingo. A little flutter, a shriek of excitement, bent backs and lured gaze as the numbers wove their pattern to surprise and please and rejoice. Fencing by the boys of Marlborough College proved a good draw, and this graceful sport brought memories of quarterstaff, archery, and the ribald shouts of men-at-arms of long ago, for English village life has always been a training ground for defensive warriors. The fete was a great success. Enough had been achieved to show that the festival week would be a success, and, weather permitting, we were assured of a great deal of support from near and far. Music was provided to please all tastes. Young folk showed their brand of music with electric guitars, strange jerks and nasal voices, amplified to strident excess by microphones and speakers. A military band gave the authentic sound to a village fete, and the pulsing music and brassy chords brought their sure delight. On Tuesday, June the 8th, the Potterne players gave a performance of The Shadow of the Eagle. This village drama group has for years upheld a fine tradition of performance, and many have offered their services to help the players during each production. The wonderful setting of the early English architecture in the Chancellor Potterne Church gave the cast a fine background for their interpretation of this play, which deals with the lives of early Christians. Colourful costumes and the beauty of lighting in such a notable setting gave the players' actions wonderful support. The story delighted a large and appreciative audience. The years rolled away, and we were back in the stirring times of early Christendom. Phew! What a relief! All artists must have a celebration to bring freedom from the exciting and tense moments when nerves have been strained and doubts have assailed. The Lord Bishop of Salisbury had been our chief guest at the performance in the church. Now his lordship could meet and talk to all concerned with the production. The village hall resounded to happy voices. Appreciation was freely expressed, and the approval of the bishop was a prize gladly accepted. One more item in Potterne's festival programme had earned for the village acclaim and applause, and the committee members smiled. Some like dogs, some like horses. For others, the car and boat bring travel and challenge. Games and guns are badges of outdoor prowess. but all like gardens, beautiful, expensive gardens, quiet, shaded rose gardens. The gardens of Porthill House and Eastwell House were amongst those which were open for public delight. Here the Potterne week of festival offered calmness, tranquil moments of quietude to the visitor. Here memory could slip away into thoughts of the past, loved faces and voices return, and all was peace in many a thankful heart. The herd of pigs known as the Sabre herd has brought international business fame to this village. The farm is on the Wisterley Road, and its clean white wall shows something of the care and attention lavished on this well-known herd of pedigree pigs. At various times during the festival week, the visitors to the village were made welcome at Major Doxford's farm, and we were grateful that such an important contribution to the festival programme had been made possible. We have said that the Porch House, with its black and white exterior, would be a focal point of the village festival. This glorious house, with its long history, is once more a gracious and interesting home. Our cameras recorded something of the charm of this ancient English dwelling. Our hostess of the Porch House would entertain many a delighted visitor before the festival concluded, and we all felt a tinge of pride in knowing that the Porch House was open to the public. No one can view old beams and rafters without thinking of the glory of woodwork, bold, sure, and intriguing. Porch House is on the edge of the main street. The noise of traffic assails its most well-known side, but few realize the glory that waits on the other side. Here we can find handsome lawns, restrained flower beds, and fascinating gardens on rising levels. Beautiful stone balustrading erected by a previous owner gives a distinguished style to the top lawns of this attractive and intimate garden. Exhibitions were mounted for festival week in the village school by kind permission of the headmaster and managers. The exhibitions were to be a revelation of the historic objects preserved by many householders, and photographs, we hoped, would glorify both past and present. Our exhibition halls contained a treasury of photographs which revealed to all a village active, alert, and proud of its past generations. Pictures of old charabancs with characteristic hard tires brought back memories to the older visitors of former outings, and were examined with wide-eyed surprise by the younger viewers. All villages can boast of many stories and landmarks. Fond memories of eccentrics, past sportsmen, and dear old ladies abound. The exhibition of objects in the museum room contained items of domestic use, farm and field implements, clothing, dolls, and small treasures of family significance. Both exhibitions served to prove the well-founded roots of our village society. Other items of festival week were quickly over, but the exhibitions were there for all to see, each day and every day of this memorable week. Thursday, June the 10th, was the turn of the younger generation. The village hall is always too small for gatherings of this sort, and the press of parents and friends, eager to see the young people, once again proved this point. The delight which is felt by all parents as they watch child actors always creates an excitement infectious in such an audience. The parents awaited in noisy anticipation for the curtains to move aside and reveal the delights of make-believe. We were entertained by a wide variety of items given by scouts, guides, cubs and groundlings. They offered a play to amuse. Rollicking singing for young and old completed their items. Miss Potterne was there in the regal splendour of young beauty. Children from a local private school entertained us with their dramatic performance of Ruth Pierce and her untimely end after irreverent remarks of the deity. Parents were thrilled to see the youngsters perform, and all were grateful to the adult leaders, who, by being young in heart, led and guided the children through the fun of games and fantasy, song and story. Friday night was a mixed evening, with many activities to gladden the visitor and the villager. Potterne Cricket Club has been vigorous and active for years. Many former players now proudly support the teams of today. Our ground is in a beautiful place with the rising contours of Potterne Field leading to One Tree, the skyline badge of Potterne. The village club organised some festival cricket for one of the evenings. Fun and laughter ensued, and once again this important village club added to its significant contribution to manliness and good sportsmanship and memories. The pavilion is pleasant, and the club members work hard to keep it in good order. We hope that it will always bring pleasure to the boys of the village and to their families. The Bash is a strange name for an important but small slice of Potterne. Adjacent to the George and Dragon, this small open space has long featured as a meeting place for gossip and for festival occasions. For the festival it became the site of an exhibition of vintage cars. These graceful cars attracted a concentrated throng of interested spectators who eagerly gazed at the fine lines of these old-timers of the road. From the Bash, the visitors and villagers would eventually walk along the High Street to congregate in Duck Street for other items of entertainment. Meanwhile, the old cars inspired many a motoring story, and car owners secretly compared 1965 models with these sturdily constructed jobs. Young children found the crowd exciting, and the cars were magnets to attract the caresses of children. Two comics dressed up as tramps with artificial beards of crepe hair. And so good was their disguise that not a few felt angry about this intrusion. However, the spirit of their action was not lost, and the festival gained considerably from their efforts and originality. The children loved the battle organ music. Chris Giddings is proud of his craft, and we were proud to display it. Many of the houses and farm buildings in this area are testimonies to his skill with thatching tools and materials. A pretty face, a ready smile, gracious manner. These were the badges of our volunteer hostesses for Friday evening. They greeted and guided the visitors along the high street to the various entertainments. Thank you, young lady. The festival committee organised a display of dancing in Duck Street. Old time was demonstrated and enjoyed by the crowd. Handbell ringing was an important item of entertainment, and the delicate vibrations from these small bells satisfied our ears with their rendering of well-known melodies. The Morris dancers, with their strange mixture of nimble feet, heavy footfalls and stiff backs, gave us a fine performance. Rhythm and tunefulness never failed. The crowd was eager, and the dances and players were well received and applauded. Highland dances were delightful. The kilt and costumes of the ladies with the splendour of the tartan made a fine spectacle. Wiltshire and the Highlands have one thing in common. Both areas have large stretches of wide skyline and windswept places. Now we know one another, an appreciation of graceful dance and swirls and figures and pulsing rhythm. The pageant leaders and committee had been working and planning for months. Rehearsals were sometimes very disappointing because key figures were engaged in many pursuits or business made diary times difficult. Hard work and a lot of faith brought us to Saturday evening and to the pageant. It was to be a glorious success. The crowds came, the weather was kind, the church house gardens delighted all who saw them for the first time. In this beautiful setting, the choir announced items for our enjoyment. The May morning ceremonial was well performed by pupils of a local school. They were gaily attired and carried garlands of flowers. The distinctive notes of the recorder, that popular early English flute, were to be heard supported by a drummer's beat as the children rounded off the ceremony with dancing. Like many other villages, Potterne had its own version of a mummers' play. This was performed every year at Christmas time until just after the turn of this century. The words of the play were handed down verbally, and more thought of Archdeacon Buchanan, a past vicar of Potterne, might well have been lost altogether. He copied down the words, and this text of the play was kept in the church chest until 1953, when young men of the village revived the play, and it was performed at Christmastide that year. It was performed again as part of the pageant when the grotesque characters with their shuffling gait, quaint costume, and bloodless sword play delighted the large audience. In 1107, Bishop Roger came to Sarum to succeed St. Osmond, entitling him to many estates in this area, including the manor of Potterne. Roger, an unknown priest in Caen, attracted the attention of Prince Henry, whose protégé he became, and held successive high offices before being enthroned as bishop by Henry I. Bishop Roger built the castle of Devizes, making it the most formidable in England. Robert, Duke of Normandy, was imprisoned here during its completion. Bishop Roger grew in abundant power and dignity, but when King Stephen usurped the throne, he distrusted the bishops. Fighting ensued between the followers of the bishop and the king, and Stephen, full of wrath, was determined to defeat them. He besieged the castle where Bishop Roger, his wife Matilda, and his brother, the Bishop of Ely, were confined. Under threat of the execution of the Lord Chancellor, nephew of the bishop, the castle surrendered. Bishop Ely was banished from the realm, but Bishop Roger was arrested and imprisoned until his death. Belter was born at Coleshot Mill, where he worked until 1774, when he invested in a pair of pistols and set out on a life of adventure. He robbed many in the Devizes area and cut the dash at this time, being known as Captain by local ostlers and tapsters. After robbing those travelling the road from London to Bath, he was recognised at Staines and fled home, riding from Maidenhead to Poleshot in 7 hours, hence his name, the Flying Highwayman. He fell in love with Bessie Bliss of Ashton, who failed to turn him from his lawless ways. He turned west, robbing all manner of travellers, until a reward was offered for his capture. He then joined forces with Jack Caldwell at Bristol, and from this time on his luck turned. He was shot in the face and had to take to a mask. Finally he was captured and put in irons. He was hanged at Winchester at the age of 30, the crowd treating him as a hero. His body was taken first to Winchester, and thereafter, as an example to others, Thomas Belter, the Flying Highwayman, was gibbeted at Worthy Down. In a cottage in Nurse Street, Potterne, lived a vile and tempered widow named Ruth Pierce, whose neighbours were unsure of her honesty. On January the 25th, 1753, all the people of the village made their way into Devizes for market day, including Bessie and Sally Slade, Mary Parker, and Ruth Pierce. The 4 women could only afford 1 sack of wheat between them, at 17 shillings. Ruth Pierce handed the money to Farmer Alexander. Suddenly an argument broke out and Parson Wells came hurrying over. Farmer Alexander showed him that he had received 3 pence short. The women all protested that they had paid their share, and Widow Pierce in passion cried, "I will take my Bible oath that I paid my whole share. May God strike me dead this instant if I did not." Parson Wells and Mary Parker tried to quieten her, but she only shrieked the more furiously, "I wish he may strike me dead." With a look of horror on her face, she fell dead to the ground. From her clenched fist dropped 3 penny The close of the pageant was a rousing carnival dance. The whole cast of the evening assembled on the lawns where the pageant had been performed. Folk dancing and the gay, noisy mood of carnival concluded this wonderful evening, a tribute to the eagerness of the village performers and the excellence of the producer's work. final act of the pageant, with its mood of goodwill, revealed the success of the entire week of festival. Potterne had shown itself to be a vital village community, steeped in tradition, and yet eager for an active, productive future. It is an English summer evening with sounds, laughter, tears and memory as we return to the High Street, the heart of the village and the link with the larger world. The festival lights are on as the camera turns to the church and we finish our festival record asking for God's blessing on our lovely Wiltshire village.